Hi, everybody. Okay, so to start, I've got Alissa and I've got Jessica, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves, and then we're going to get started. So we'll start with Alissa.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. I'm a product management executive with 15 years in omni-channel retail, most currently at Corus Entertainment, bringing that digital product management skill to streaming and entertainment. So I'm really excited to be here to talk about customer success. Jessica?
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I am 20 years as a growth executive, formerly for driving transformative growth over tier one companies like Walmart, Tim Hortons, Aeroplan, and TD. Actually, Alissa and I used to work together at Walmart. I was the head of mergers and acquisitions there, and Alissa drove the digital product. And so it'll be a really great, interesting conversation today for you.
Great. And I just realized I didn't introduce myself. I'm Deanna Stacey from Blue Umbrella Services. It is an advisory organization that I run, and I was at Porter Airlines for 11 years running their customer experience. Okay, so to get started, really what we're talking about today is unlocking growth and strategic partnerships. So I want to really talk about how you maintain trust during large changes, whether it's mergers and acquisitions, other partnerships, how you do that. We'll start with you, Alissa, first.
Yeah, when I was thinking about this question, I thought a lot about go-to-market. That's really a new role in the digital technology space, and it's actually becoming a distinct role. So for a lot of times, it was always sitting in product or a little piece of project. But when I think about go-to-market, I think about maintaining customer trust through change, because those are product feature launches, they're relaunches, redesigns, rebrands, and I think the most important thing about go-to-market is, and my tip is, don't leave it off of your project plan, right? Like a lot of times you're thinking about your milestones and you're thinking about how to get to MVP, how to get to that day, but go-to-market is actually from that day forward. And I think a lot of times, even up to today, I'm seeing project plans. I'm working on a big project at Corus for authentication and consent management, and I see the project plan with milestones and I see no plan for go-to-market. So that's my first tip, is make sure it's part of your planning from day one at inception, not an afterthought, especially now and today when there's so much change and disruption. And my second thought is to over communicate, but not be anxious, right? So to over communicate with your customers the value proposition and give them enough lead time and really open those lines of communication. And then the third tip is listen and hold yourself to the analytics that you set out for that change. Like a lot of times you go out to market with a product and you're launching a big change, and you said, oh, you're going to drive, a couple of basis points improvement on conversion, and then you go out and you don't see it. Right? Are you still going to roll out? No, you should listen to your customers, read the feedback, read the reviews, and continue to iterate. That's how you build their trust, right? By listening to the customers in that go-to-market moment and really making that change and holding yourself accountable to that standard that you originally set and to the promise that you made, right? Yeah. What do you think?
And just to pick up on what you were saying, Alissa, around customer trust. So I'm even thinking I come from a world of, much larger structural transformation. So whether it's buying another company and integrating it, or actually rolling out more organic growth through partnerships instead, it's something that from a customer standpoint, customers actually don't mind change, despite what we might think otherwise. But what they find not tolerable is uncertainty. So how do you address the uncertainty of the change? When I'm talking and thinking about just some very crisp examples, our time at Walmart, I was part of the task team when COVID hit. Mm-hmm. So when people were collecting their all of their toilet paper and rushing and all of that, right? And then it was one of those change. Is it a change? And then we had all of those specific regulations that we had to roll out accordingly, right? What were essentials or not. And what is very important is not the change itself, but it's how you articulate and you address the uncertainty. And so hopefully, through different forms of communication, you kind of have to at least land it 5 to 7 times before a lot of people really digest what the new idea is. But when you're changing behavior, that uncertainty of, is it going to be the same way as it was before, isn't really the problem. It's the uncertainty, is this new going to be better or worse for me? And so that's really the point here around customer success and the trust factor.
And I think it's great to point out that now is a great moment of change, right? With the introduction of AI into almost every experience. And I think I'm lacking a lot of that, like, authenticity and support. And I feel a lot of uncertainty as a user and a customer when agents are getting, pushed into every experience. And I'm not feeling, a lot of that support across many experiences. And so I think now is a moment to really gut check and say, you're bringing AI or an agent. Does your clientele know the purpose of that agent and the value add? Or is it just another sort of friction point of uncertainty that they don't really know the purpose of? So I think it's a great point that you're bringing up for today.
Yeah. I mean, who's heard of AI slop? Show of hands. Right? Where you're getting emails or you're in a chat bot and you're like, okay, this is clearly AI's written this. In fact, now it's becoming the default. And so figuring out what the right balance between, to your point, authenticity and obviously personalization is critical. But now it's almost become a baseline. So in some ways, how do we not swing the complete opposite end of the spectrum on customer support and success?
Yeah, and I think what you're both saying is it's knowing that there's value for the customer and really setting those expectations of where that change is going to be. To your point, change is going to happen. Customers expect that. I found that at Porter as well. And when things didn't go right, they expect that too. As long as you're then clear of, okay, your flight's been delayed, but this is what's going to happen next.
And leading with authenticity.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Today, when there's such a lack of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So next question is, how have you shifted your operating or your delivery model to position customer success as a driver of growth and value?
I'll take this
Yeah.
one. So I'm actually also the co-founder and growth officer of Uninterrupted, which is a private network and concierge service for professional women to absorb some of the mental load that they take on, which is about 30% more than our male counterparts. And so when we originally launched in the spirit of like a true partner, a startup, we decided, okay, let's start with a self-serve type delivery, which is digital platform where one of our members can go up and select who out of our list of members based on 150 different interruptions that they may experience, whether it's managing with an aging parent or going and getting divorced, looking up all the members who have been divorced to connect with them and understand exactly what their process was, or to connect with a divorce lawyer who's been vetted by one of our founding members. And we thought this would be great because when do you actually think about yourself? It's probably not during business hours. It's likely after business hours, right? That makes sense. For me, it's usually 1 a.m. And so we rolled it out. I mean, again, shoestring budget, startup, we rolled it out, MVP. And what we found is that while it intuitively made sense, it was more of an inward view because obviously it's scalable. But what we found is that the engagement levels weren't quite there. And to your point around listening to customer feedback, for us, it was really important to start small and test and have real life focus groups, right? Always listening to the customer and our members of what that looks like. And so we actually went from a digital platform self-serve to the complete opposite side of the spectrum of a one-on-one high-touch concierge service. And the reason why is what we've learned is that for women at certain junctures, actually being heard is part of the process. It's not just about finding the solution. And so, there's obvious questions around the business model itself. You then have one-on-one human connection, but the labor costs associated with that. And so you end up in a situation, and I find this, I don't know if everyone else does too, is sometimes the internal business KPIs or what's good for the business might not necessarily be good for the customer or vice versa. And there's constantly that trade-off between the two. And figuring out, okay, if this is what the customer wants from a success standpoint, then we need to figure out how to be able to service them in a way that's affordable, that still makes sense, but yet offering a very different customer experience. And to be honest, we've had great success with it.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about partnerships now. Partnerships can provide real value for customers, but can also provide kind of tension and friction. How do you set up partnerships so that you reduce that tension and get the best experience possible? Start with you, Alissa.
Yeah, when I heard about this question, I thought a lot about omni-channel retail. So give you an example. Who here has done an online grocery order? Yeah, so many of you. And who, when it comes to the door, that's really the crux of the experience for you, right? And what happens when you're in the business is that you're often partnering with third-party logistics companies to complete that last mile. And that was a really tough type of partnership. I think when you think about that's the only face-to-face moment you're going to have in this end-to-end experience, starting with, starting up from acquisition through the entire digital journey, through the supply chain, and now your only moment to have that interaction with the customer is a partnership. Right? And I don't know about a lot of you, but I've had many experiences that weren't that positive at the door, from like bags being forgotten in the car, to receiving somebody else's order, to even people I remember at work, like talking to a third-party logistics person about, the retailer and them responding as if, they worked for the retailer and representing the retailer. But it's a double-edged sword. I think, and how we solved that at Walmart, I think is, through, strong partnership at the outset, and you need it to scale, right? That's the whole thing. It's a necessary evil when you talk about starting as a startup, starting small, and even within these larger retailers, a lot of these omni-channel businesses started out really small, and then over time, the retailer took over that part. So in the end, there wasn't like a true solve. And I think a lot of the cases when you're thinking about your own businesses is, you start with a partnership. It's just like the build versus buy, eternal questions. It's you may start with a buy, but if it's part of your core competency as you scale, in my experience, the goal should be try eating away at that and bringing it in-house for yourself if it's part of your core competency. So those were some of the tensions we had, in that space with partnership, but really essential to get the coverage and to get the business model going, right?
And I know for you at BU, it's a very different type of partnership.
Yeah, so at Be Uninterrupted, it's a network. And so we're basically playing like triage and then, funneling and referring experts to our members, experts being, specialists or those that are like lawyers, therapists, psychologists. So for us, our core competency, of course, is connecting and matching and making sure that we focus on the right referrals. But at the end of the day, the partner is what's delivering the ultimate solution for the members. And so, it comes back down to, for me, whether it's with BU or whether it's at Walmart and dealing with vendors and some of the bigger strategic partnerships that I've done, it comes down to the actual structure of the partnership agreement. In terms of handoffs, in terms of customer data is really, really important. Who owns the customer data? Who transfers that customer data over? Like that's the traceability part that is very important that we can always refer back to our customers, because that's a privilege to have is customer data. Someone has given you their data, and especially with Be Uninterrupted, it's more sensitive information, it's personal information. And so it was really important for all of our expert networks that the customer, the member, is the one that actually gives us permission and actually will only do a warm introduction, but we do not share any customer data. That was part of our partnership agreement. And so it's really important when you're laying that out at the onset, because we already were thinking through what are going to be the top 5 complaints or challenges. And so then we stress test exactly, does this contract and partnership structure, make sure that won't ever happen.
Yeah, the contract can only go so far though, right? I think like ultimately, I think, listen, your members are incredible women, and that interconnecting them, you're going to get an incredible confluence of skills and connection. I think when you're looking at the corporate scale though, and when we look at customer success being now more at the center I really think you need to think about your interaction with the customer and making sure that you are a part of that interaction. And so the partnership in an ideal world, and this is my tip, would be around that and not at the point of interaction in an ideal world, you know?
So if we take Walmart, for example, they have a low-cost model, right? A lot of it is self-serve. Show of hands, like the ideal situation, quite honestly, is it's a self-serve model, similar to like an IKEA that you should be able to. But if you need to ask for an associate, that's a fail. Yeah. That means we didn't either, and I keep on saying we, but anyways, like it's a fail in either merchandise layout, signage, flow if it's in the wrong part, if the assortment is off, and that's again in the store. So asking for a store associate and getting their help is actually the opposite. And so we don't necessarily train associates for higher level, so like electronics, for example, where there's a higher level of training required. That isn't part of Walmart. That's actually outsourced. But as a customer and a shopper coming in, you shouldn't actually know the difference if they work for Walmart or not, or which department took care of what. It doesn't matter, right? You are walking in with a need or a want of a product, you want it in your size, and you get out of there. Same with the online journey as well. If you are suddenly now stopping and holding it in the cart, to me, that's not a customer success.
Good point.
Thanks.
Okay, last question before we get to questions from the audience. And you talked a little bit about this with the concierge, but how do you balance internal operational efficiency goals with actually delivering a good customer experience? And I think you're going through this now with the concierge.
Yeah, I mean, there's just always going to be tension, right? I mean, at the enterprise level, you're always going to have budgets, and there's certain metrics that you want to hit, and that's going to be really important. It really comes down to what is the value exchange that your customer is looking for, and you can't be all things to all people. And so with Be Uninterrupted, it is really making sure that within a very 30-minute phone call, you basically we will understand the opportunity. We will then review some of our recommendations with you. We will also talk to you about a couple of steps, and then we would, in that same half an hour, also set up warm introductions for you. So it should be done all within that half an hour, so that way you can get on with your day. And so, that 30 minutes, while it appears to the customer that we've done our research, that we've thought about you and all of that, behind the scenes, we actually have some systems that allow a referral engine, that same self-serve dashboard that we once had, we're still using, but now we're using it and sharing it with you as well. So I think that there's some opportunity to always give, within the first 2 to 3 weeks of a new customer journey, that initial investment up front, but then we're not getting rid of that self-serve platform, because we believe that you do that upfront investment, whether you call it an acquisition cost or not, but I think over time it'll eventually go into a self-serve, but it's step by step.
And this is a completely different lens, being in product management, but a lot of product management is that this is the crux of the discipline, right? It's sort of balancing the organizational needs and workflow optimization with like customer outcomes. So one of my biggest tips, especially being a leader going into a situation in a corporate entity, is kind of having target percentages of like what you like want to invest into each area. So, you always want to have, I don't know, let's say 30% in terms of like bottom line or workflow optimization, 20% keep the lights on, and 50% outcome generating work. So I always kind of like to do that analysis. And if you're coming new into a business, it's really good to take stock and say, are we over invested in internal associate colleague facing, improvements, and not doing enough for the customer, which is a trap we, can get into a lot in businesses. So I think that that's something that really helps me. And then my last tip is kind of don't you might have to always present options for customer improvements, regardless of the tone of the year, right? Every year, and I know a lot of us are going into the never-ending annual planning cycle, and every year has a different tone. Some years are more austere, right, and more of bottom line focus. Some years are more growth years and top line. But as a product leader and as an executive in the digital space, every year, no matter the tone, I bring new bets. I bring options and I share them with the senior leadership. They don't always buy it, but you have to sometimes repeat yourself over more than one cycle to really get the buy-in. And so that's kind of my tip there is, you as a leader in this space, you should always be bringing forward the voice of the customer, no matter the tone, and not be discouraged if in that year or in that quarter, there's not the appetite for it, because it will come. And I know both of us have seen so many, austerity, prosperity cycles to know that, like, if you have a great idea and you know that customers want it, keep shouting it from the rooftops.
Yeah. Questions. You have a couple minutes for questions.
I guess we nailed it.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess that's it. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.